Tonight at 6, an astonishing medical breakthrough is hailed by doctors in Manchester. It gives new hope to sufferers of a debilitating disease. 3-year-old Oliver is the first patient in the world with Hunter syndrome to receive the new gene therapy, and it seems to have halted the disease.
His speech has gotten exponentially better, his mobility has gotten better, his agility, his cognitive, everything.
Also tonight, senior BBC figures are giving evidence to MPs over the crisis at the corporation, which led to the resignation of 2 top executives. Harshita Brella found dead last year in a car boot in London. Now 4 police officers face misconduct proceedings. After their spectacular Ashes collapse, should England's batters be doing more batting between now and the second test?
You can get it if you really want.
And Jimmy Cliff, who for decades brought the sound of reggae to a global audience, has died at the age of 81.
Also this hour, London councils call for more government financial support after some make tough decisions over cutting services. And the race to rescue London's rare and endangered hairy snail.
Good evening. This is Oliver Chu. He's 3 years old and he comes from California, and he has a rare debilitating disease called Hunter syndrome. The condition is inherited and it causes progressive damage throughout the body. In the most severe cases, sufferers may die before they're 20. But Oliver's prospects are bright because he is the first person in the world to receive groundbreaking gene therapy developed in Manchester. Fergus Walsh has this exclusive report.
Oliver, just check your temperature. Thank you, that's a good boy.
Oliver has flown with his dad from California to Manchester for a world-first gene therapy. It's December 2024 at Royal Manchester Children's Hospital. And Oliver is having his blood filtered to remove stem cells. He has a rare condition, Hunter syndrome, due to a faulty gene, which causes progressive damage to the body and brain. So there's no time to lose.
Everything's a race against time for us. Another day, we just want the kids to be healthy and have a more normal lifestyle than they have right now.
Oliver's stem cells are sent to London's Great Ormond Street Hospital, where scientists insert a working copy of his faulty gene. 2 months later, Oliver is back in Manchester, this time with his mum, to receive the gene therapy.
We have to get bag 1 first.
And this is the big moment.
Hello. Starting now.
Oliver's tweaked stem cells should start to produce a missing enzyme, essential for keeping his body and brain healthy.
That's us done. Yay!
Having an effective treatment would be utterly life-transforming for families. It would mean moving from a constant life of medical interventions and an early death to a life where there's hope.
Ollie, you want to go play?
3 months later, the entire family is over from California, including Oliver's brother Skylar, who's 5. He also has Hunter syndrome, but was too old for this trial.
My wish upon the star is for Skylar to be able to get the same treatment. With this gene therapy, it feels like Oliver got a reset in his life, like almost a fresh slate, and that's why I want the same thing for Skylar. 1, 2, 3.
The extraordinary news is that Oliver has been able to come off all treatment because the gene therapy is working.
I want to pinch myself every time I tell people, Oliver is making his own enzymes. Every time we talk about it, I wanted to cry because it's just so amazing.
9 months on, doctors remain cautious, but they hope the gene therapy could be a permanent fix for Hunter syndrome.
We're so happy, so pleased with his progress. His results are amazing. So I've been waiting 20 years for this to see a boy like Ollie doing as well as he has, and it's just so exciting.
His speech has gotten exponentially better, his mobility has gotten better, his learning curve hasn't just gone up, but it's shot up. So no more medication, no more infusions, as close to a normal life as we can give him
Ollie is one of 5 boys who are part of this world-first gene therapy trial. It's early days, but if successful, it would transform their life chances and give hope to other families affected by this rare and often devastating condition.
And Fergus is with me now. Wonderful news for Oliver. How soon before this could be more widely available?
It'll be a while, Rita. The hospital hopes to have performed the gene therapy on all 5 boys in the trial within a few months. One of them's coming from Australia. They'll be monitored for 2 years, so doctors have to wait and see, does this work in the long term? Now, there are good reasons to be optimistic. There's a gene therapy for another inherited rare disorder, MLD, also a devastating disease, and that uses the same approach, and there is now a licensed treatment. But that drug costs almost £3 million. Now, even though the NHS gets a confidential discount, it's a lot of money. These new breakthroughs are expensive. And the hospital now has to find a pharmaceutical company to get involved, to partner it, because very unusually, this trial has been funded by a British medical research charity, LifeArc. But ultimately, I think this is a story of hope for Oliver, for his parents, for other families affected by Hunter syndrome, and a tribute to the scientists and the staff in Manchester who spent the past 15 years developing this treatment.
Thank you very much. Fergus Walsh there. The chairman of the BBC, Samir Shah, who's giving evidence to MPs now, has said that he tried to stop Tim Davie from resigning as Director General and that he considered the departure of Deborah Turness as Chief Executive of News as a very honourable act. Senior BBC figures are being questioned in the Commons after claims of bias were made in a leaked internal memo written by Michael Prescott, which led to the resignations of the 2 top executives. Mr Shah said the corporation should have taken much earlier action over an edited clip of Donald Trump that featured in a Panorama programme and for which the President is now suing the BBC. Here's David Silito.
BBC News at 6 o'clock. Good evening.
It has been a rocky few weeks for the BBC, especially BBC News, with the resignation of the Director General and Head of News in the aftermath of a memo written by an editorial advisor outlining what he felt were editorial failings on stories of race, trans issues, Israel, and most notably, an edit of a speech by Donald Trump on Panorama that the BBC now admits was a mistake. Today, that advisor faced MPs to talk about that memo and whether it was politically motivated.
There was no ideology at play here, no party politics. If, for example, if you take the example of the US elections report that came before the committee, if it had found that it had been Kamala Harris misrepresented, not Donald Trump, I would have acted in exactly the same way, because I don't want the BBC's coverage skewed this way or that way. I just want it to be impartial, accurate and fair.
However, when asked if the BBC was institutionally biased, he said no. It was more about how it responded to mistakes and criticism.
The public expect the BBC to be honest, accurate, impartial, fair. It is most of the times. It needs to do a better job when it's caught out not being so.
Of course, the BBC has now more than responded. His report set in train the events that led to the Director General, Tim Davie, resigning. Was this what he wanted?
He seemed to me to be doing a first-rate job across 80 or 90% of the portfolio. It was just that he had this blind spot on editorial failings. I think it's a bit of a tragedy he's gone. I thought he was a supreme talent, but he had this blind spot.
And there were many questions about the speed with which events unravelled in the week before those resignations. What was going on behind the scenes with the BBC Board of Directors? Samir Shah, the BBC chairman, apologised both for the Panorama edit and the months it took the BBC to decide it was a mistake.
We should have pursued it further at that time. And by pursuing it further, we should have investigated it in detail with the people responsible in the BBC to do that.
So, some answers for MPs, but with the President threatening a multi-billion-dollar legal action over that Panorama edit, this is far from the end of the matter. David Silito, BBC News.
Katie Razzle, our media editor, is with me. What do you make of what you've heard, Katie?
Well, I think the key thing was that the chair, Samir Shah, needed to demonstrate that he's got a grip. The pressure is on him, and today he's told MPs, right now, my job is to steer the ship. Fellow board member sitting next to him, Caroline Thompson, she said he had the unanimous support of the board, well, clearly not the board member who resigned on Friday, and that obviously added to the pressure on him ahead of the committee. Now, he was asked about the vacuum that was created by his failure to apologise for the misleading Donald Trump edit once it was made public, and he said there were sharp disagreements on the board about the programme. He suggested he hadn't accepted the apology being suggested by news executives because it wasn't sufficient. Now, he is still giving evidence, and we have also just heard for the first time from Sir Robbie Gibb, the former BBC executive and Downing Street head of communications under Theresa May, who's one of the political appointees to the board. He has been accused by some of political interference. Today he denied that, saying he's become weaponised, but said he has impartiality through his bones. And when he was asked directly whether there had been a politically motivated coup, as some people had suggested, he said it was a ridiculous charge, it's nonsense, and it's offensive to board members, complete nonsense, he said. Well, whether that is enough to quell the critics is another matter. But I think, take a step back from this. Every one of the people who's given evidence today has professed huge support for the BBC, but the divisions and the mistakes that have been laid bare over the past few weeks that have prompted big resignations at the top of the BBC and the legal threat from Donald Trump, this crisis is not over.
Katie, thank you very much. And as you said, that parliamentary session is still going on. We'll have a full update on the 10 o'clock news. Thank you. Now, the head of the business group, the CBI, has warned the Chancellor not to inflict death by 1,000 taxes on British businesses when she unveils her budget on Wednesday. Rain Newton-Smith said Rachel Reeves shouldn't look to firms to fund the tens of billions of pounds that she's expected to need to plug a hole in the public finances, as Simon Jack reports.
The voice of business has been a frustrated one since the last budget. Despite lots of pro-growth, pro-business talk, companies got hit with big tax rises, which did rattle confidence.
I think there is uncertainty in the economy at the moment, at the level of businesses and households, and that's why confidence is going to be so important.
The government realises that they have to be supportive towards business and try to minimise the cost of doing business in the UK.
I'm just hoping that we get this budget out of the way, it's not catastrophic for business, and we can focus on going forward.
For too many of you, like we are off track.
The CBI boss gave a very frank assessment of where she thinks we are now, 2 days before the next budget.
1 year later, here we are again. A new fiscal gap, billions of pounds wide. More rumours, more U-turns, raising uncertainty. Business holding its breath again. Investment pause, projects on hold. It feels less like we're on the move and more like we're stuck in Groundhog Day.
Business Secretary Peter Kyle promised to tackle barriers to growth, including high energy costs, red tape and planning, but conceded that the run-up to this budget, kites flown, then shot down, had not been helpful.
This budget is a big moment, and therefore, in the build-up to big moments, there is a lot of speculation, a lot of conjecture, and now I have been here listening to business. If business say that they want in future budgets there to be a different approach to it, well, of course, I am going to listen to that, and I will make sure that their voice is heard.
It was from this stage, just over a year ago, that the Chancellor promised she wouldn't come back for another big tax rising budget. But 2 days out, we're going to be pretty close, with a whole series of taxes expected on things like property, tax thresholds, gambling, to try and fill the hole she needs to hit her own fiscal rules. What businesses are hoping is that once again, they will not be the people to bear the brunt if they are to deliver the holy grail of economic growth that the Chancellor so desperately craves.
Budgets are about tax and spending decisions, and the leader of the opposition said the focus should be on the latter.
We are spending far too much. Government is living well beyond its means. Too many people on welfare not working. That's what they should focus on. My fear, of course, is that they're going to go for the easy but bad option of raising taxes, which will be bad for the economy.
The voice of business is saying don't clobber us with taxes again. On Wednesday, we'll find out whether it's been heard over the road. Simon Jack, BBC News, Westminster.
Sir Keir Starmer has said that progress is being made after talks at the weekend between Ukraine and the US to end the war with Russia. President Trump said earlier on social media that something good may just be happening as revisions to the US drafted 28-point plan were made. But the fighting has continued, with Ukraine's second largest city, Kharkiv, being hit by a drone attack that killed 4 people. Paul Adams is here with me. Where are we with this peace plan, Paul?
Reeta, I think it is safe to say that this is very much a work in progress. That 28-point plan that was leaked on Friday was seen as heavily in favour of Russia's core interest, and it caused panic and consternation in Kiev and among Ukraine's European backers, including, of course, the UK. Triggered a flurry of meetings, including a key encounter in Geneva yesterday between American and Ukrainian officials. Now, reports suggest those got off to a very shaky start. The Americans were furious about the leak. But by last night, the US Secretary of State Marco Rubio was saying that the talks were some of the best so far. And in a joint statement by the two sides, they said that they had agreed on an updated and refined peace framework and shared a commitment to a just and lasting peace. Just and lasting, 2 words that were completely absent from the document on Friday. Now, the Ukrainians seem pleased about it. A presidential advisor has said basically the 28-point plan no longer exists. And there are reports that the new version, which will also have taken into account European concerns, because they were also represented in Geneva, has put off some of the most contentious issues, the territorial concessions, future relations with NATO, that kind of stuff, put those off for future negotiations between the leaders themselves. Now, the Kremlin, which seemed pretty confident over the weekend, now says that what they describe as the European counter-proposal is unconstructive, so they're now quite anxious about the course of events. And as for the deadline, you know, Donald Trump said Thursday was the deadline for an agreement. I think we can take it as read that is not going to be met. But Donald Trump does seem to be in a hurry with this teasing post on social media. Could it be possible that big progress is being made in talks? I think we're going to have to wait a little while to find out.
Paul, thank you very much. Paul Adams there. The time is just after 6:15, our top story this evening. A 3-year-old boy becomes the first patient in the world with Hunter syndrome to receive a new gene therapy which seems to have halted the disease. And still to come, the birth of a wild black rhino captured on film for the first time.
At 6:30, how the lives lost and impacted by the Grenfell tragedy will be commemorated gets a step closer today. And hometown hero as Eze scores an historic hat-trick in yesterday's North London derby.
Today should have been the 4th day of the first Ashes test in Perth, but after England's dismal collapse in just 2 days last week, they're now faced with trying to get their tour back on track. The failure of England's batting has led to questions as to why none of its star players is getting more match practice between now and the second test in Brisbane, which starts next week. From Perth, here's Dan Rowan.
It was a defeat that will haunt England. Thrashed in the first 2-day Ashes test for more than a century. And it's not getting any easier. Next up, Brisbane and a day-night test, a format where the ball swings more. England resume training next Monday. But they could have played a day-night tour match this weekend to get used to the conditions. Today, however, confirmation their first-choice batsman wouldn't appear.
I've absolutely no doubt that these guys practice very, very hard in the net. But certainly given what we saw in the Perth test match, it wouldn't hurt for people to go, and especially in a pink ball game where the conditions and the way the ball behaves and the way the ball feels in your hand and it feels off the bat is so different to normal cricket.
For the past 2 days, some fans in Perth have passed the time watching England's reserve side. The senior team was criticised for playing just one warm-up match at this ground before the first test. But after the defeat, the head coach resisted calls to play another before the second.
We don't do anything for optics. All we try and do is give ourselves the best chance of how we think we can win an Ashes series or a Test series. And over the next couple of days, we'll work out whether guys going and playing in that game is the right thing, or whether keeping the team tight and making sure morale doesn't drop is the alternative.
Tonight, England fans in Perth gave me their reaction to the team passing up the chance of some match practice.
I think it's arrogance, it's sheer arrogance that they
They think they don't need it, obviously.
The England team come over here and have 3 days in Lilac Hill and think that that's enough preparation. Pure arrogance.
Ominously, Australia have won 13 of their 14 day-night tests, with star bowler Mitchell Starc especially effective.
England's quick-fire defeat here extended their dismal record in Australia and opened up an 11-day break in their schedule. And if their batsmen don't improve their performance in the second test, the scrutiny on their preparations and style of play will intensify. Dan Rowan, BBC News, Perth.
The controversial US and Israeli-backed Gaza Humanitarian Foundation has announced that its aid operation has ended. GHF replaced the United Nations Refugee Agency in Gaza, which was previously the main provider of humanitarian aid. The organisation was repeatedly criticised over the deaths of Palestinians amid chaotic scenes at its distribution sites, something they've previously denied. GHF said it had delivered more than 180 million meals in Gaza since starting operations. 4 officers from Northamptonshire Police are facing misconduct proceedings over their handling of abuse allegations reported by Harshita Brella, who was found dead in a car boot in November 2024. It comes after an investigation by the watchdog, the Independent Office for Police Conduct. Our correspondent Joe Black is in Northampton for us. Tell us more about this, Joe.
Yeah, it was in August of last year that Harshita Brella, who was living in Corby at the time, made a report to Northamptonshire Police saying that she'd suffered domestic abuse by her husband, Pankaj Lamba. Now, he was arrested and bailed, told not to contact his wife, and made the subject issued with a domestic violence protection order. Now, just over 2 months later, Harshita Brella's body was discovered in the back of a Vauxhall Corsa 100 miles away in Ilford in East London, and the police watchdog considered the actions of 2 detectives who were assigned to the domestic abuse investigation and a sergeant and a chief inspector, which had supervisory roles. Now, we've had a statement from the police force here today. They've said misconduct proceedings are now underway, and with regard to the IOPC report, they say they will seek to implement any recommendations that improve the quality of the service that we provide. So it's now down to a police disciplinary panel to determine whether the allegations those 4 officers are facing are proven or not. As for Pankaj Lamba, he is still at large. He has been charged with Harshita Brella's murder, and the investigation to locate him is still ongoing.
Joe, thank you. President Trump says that he's accepted an invitation from President Xi of China to visit Beijing in April. It follows a call between the leaders of the world's 2 largest economies, in which they discussed issues including Russia's war on Ukraine. In a post on Truth Social, President Trump described the call as very good and said the US relationship with China was extremely strong. He went on to say that President Xi had been invited for a state visit to the USA. The former Prime Minister Lord Cameron has revealed that he's been successfully treated for prostate cancer. He said that he was diagnosed earlier this year after a prostate-specific antigen or PSA test, which looks for proteins associated with prostate cancer. So should there be more screening for men? Sophie Hutchinson is here to explain. Sophie.
Well, prostate cancer is the most common cancer in men in the UK, with around 55,000 new cases every year. David Cameron told the Times newspaper that it was his wife Samantha who made him go for a checkup. He said, "I don't particularly like discussing my personal, intimate health issues, but I feel I ought to." He went on, "I sort of thought, well, this has happened to you and you should lend your voice to it." Only found in men, the prostate is a walnut-sized gland under the bladder, seen here in red. Currently, there's no national screening programme, but men over the age of 50 can ask their GP for a prostate-specific antigen test, or PSA. That looks for abnormally high levels of a protein in the blood associated with the disease. The problem, though, is that PSA tests can be unreliable and identify cancers which don't need treating, whilst missing those that do. Lord Cameron's intervention comes as the UK's National Screening Committee is due to announce whether to recommend the introduction of a national prostate cancer screening programme for men at high risk.
Sophie, thank you. The first filmed birth of a wild black rhino has been captured by documentary makers. The species is critically endangered. There are only 6,000 black rhino living in the wild. The film, which is out in cinemas on Friday, follows the efforts of rangers in Kenya to relocate 21 animals while risking their own lives to protect them from poachers. Helena Wilkinson reports.
Where rhinos are not a symbol of extinction, but one of hope.
This team of rangers in Kenya have kept these rhinos safe from poachers for almost 10 years. A new documentary follows the challenges they face in growing the population of this critically endangered species. The film's director worked alongside them for 4 years.
We are trying to protect them, their lives.
The areas immediately around the conservancies where they currently are still have issues with cattle banditry and organised criminality, and so you can't simply open the fences and let them out because the poaching crisis would resurge, and so you have to move them to completely new habitats.
These majestic animals are dangerous to film, and key parts of their life in the wild haven't been documented, including birth, until this documentary. The team followed 3 pregnant rhinos for days at a time. Then came this remarkable moment. It's believed to be the first time the birth of a black rhino in the wild has been captured on camera. The filmmakers hope that by capturing something so significant, they'll better understand how they can protect these critically endangered animals in the future. Helena Wilkinson, BBC News.
The Ukrainian freediving champion Katerina Sadurska has set a new world record, diving to 86 metres under the sea with no help from fins or oxygen. The dive, done on a single breath, lasted 3 minutes 32 seconds, and it beat her own world record by 2 metres. One of Bollywood's biggest stars, Dharmendra, has died at the age of 89. In a career spanning more than 6 decades, Dharmendra starred in more than 300 films, including the blockbuster Sholay. Dubbed the original He-Man of Bollywood, he commanded huge affection and loyalty from his fans for his action and romantic roles. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi paid tribute to the star, saying that his death marked the end of an era in Indian cinema. And the reggae legend Jimmy Cliff, who helped to bring the sound of Jamaica to a global audience, has died at the age of 81. A star since the 1960s, his hits included The Harder They Come and You Can Get It If You Really Want. Mark Savage looks back at his life.
Reggae's first true crossover star. Jimmy Cliff was born into poverty and built his first guitar out of bamboo before hitting the clubs in Kingston, Jamaica.
The lion said, I am king and I reign.
He moved to the UK in the 1960s to spread the reggae gospel. He called it a pure music, born of his ancestors' struggle.
They worked and they suffered and they died. I'm conscious that that happened to them. So I will not accept that happening to me. I'm going to have some fun.
That outlook earned him an entirely new audience, but it was a film that made him a global star.
Didn't I tell you I was going to be famous one day?
The Harder They Come, the story of a musician turned outlaw. Its soundtrack became a smash hit.
I am feeling very Olympic today. How about you?
New audiences met him through the music for the 1990s comedy film Cool Runnings and his regular appearances at Glastonbury. With a voice undimmed by the passing years.
Jimmy Cliff, who's died at the age of 81. Time now for a look at the weather with Ben Rich. Hi, Ben.
Hi, Rita. Thank you very much indeed. I think the main thing you'll notice about this week's weather is that it is not going to be anything like as cold as it was last week. Now, that said, a little bit chilly over the next 24 hours, but tomorrow will mostly be sunny. From midweek onwards, it turns significantly milder, but there will also be some wind and rain at times. Now, we've got some showers out there right now. They will continue across parts of eastern Scotland, eastern England, also West Wales, the southwest of England, 1 or 2 for Northern Ireland. Other areas through the night seeing some clear spells. It stays fairly blustery out there, but quite cold. Temperatures in parts of Scotland all the way down to around -5 Celsius. But as we head into tomorrow, we see this ridge of high pressure building its way in, and that'll mean fewer showers and more in the way of dry weather. Some showers again across eastern Scotland, northeast England, a few into East Anglia, and just 1 or 2 scraping across Pembrokeshire and Cornwall. But other areas through the day seeing dry weather, plenty of sunshine, but temperatures struggling a little bit. 5 degrees there in Glasgow, 10 in Plymouth. That said, with some sunshine, it shouldn't feel too bad. But it is going to get cold tomorrow night. A widespread frost, temperatures down below freezing. Although by Wednesday morning, out towards the west, things will be turning milder because we'll have a weather system arriving, bringing cloud, outbreaks of rain pushing eastwards. It'll start to turn, I think, quite misty and murky out towards the west, but also turning milder in the west, with temperatures by the end of the day up to 11 or 12 degrees. And that is a sign of things to come. This big wedge of mild air working its way right across the UK as we head into Thursday. But with that very mild air, there'll be a lot of moisture, so lots of clouds, some mist and murk, some rain at times. But look at the temperatures, all the way up to around 14 degrees. Rita.
Ben, thank you. We'll be back with the news at 10, but now it's time for the news where you are. Bye-bye.